bit wet this morning, but I'm excited because today I'm going to be making this. It's a plaster sculpture and it's the first one I've ever made, and I really enjoyed it. It's great. It's a great material to work with, but it's kind of out of my comfort zone a little bit because normally when I'm making sculptures I'm taking away, carving, so I'm chipping away at a surface to get to where I want to go, whereas this, of course, you're building up the surface. So it's kind of a new thing. So come along for the journey. So it's nearly 2 years ago now, March 2020, that I contracted COVID the first time. I've had it again quite recently. And it had a profound effect upon me. Not as profound as it could have been because it nearly killed me. It also had a lasting effect on my work. In fact, I didn't really do any work for quite a considerable time. I was working on landscapes. It didn't seem like it had any resonance for me. I was kind of floundering around and doing nothing. And that's lasted a long time. And it's only really quite recently that I've started working again seriously. Work has taken a whole new direction. I just started with self-portraits, one after the other. And then some nude studies in watercolour, little tiny things. And I was trying to put myself in the most vulnerable position, but still as I was doing it, I hadn't cognised why. It's only much later, quite recently in fact, that I've really kind of nailed why I was making these pictures. And now sculpture, which I'm really embracing. So when I was in the first stages of recovery, Mrs. S and I would come here to Wilderness Wood. She'd carry everything, the chairs and perhaps some lunch, and I'd shuffle down here. It'd take me ages, couldn't breathe still. But you remember it was a really, really hot summer. It's hard to imagine on days like this that it was ever hot. But we come down here to Wilderness Lake and sit for the day. I think it made us feel part of nature, made us feel better. And there were no bloody planes then either. Okay, so this is the painting that kind of kicked the series off. This is a painting of my youngest daughter, who at the time, about a year ago, was working on an ICU ward. I hadn't really been painting figures and portraits very much. Most of the work was landscape work. This was kind of the catalyst for launching a whole new series of paintings that are much more introspective and visceral. There is a video about the making of this painting, and I'll put a link below to that. As I say, this was the launch pad. It wasn't a conscious decision I made, but in retrospect it's obvious that that was what was going on. So this was the next major painting in what has become something of a series. This is called The Amplified Ticking of Hall Clocks Echo Through Wilderness. Wilderness is the wood and the lake that we've just visited, the place of recovery. But this is about, reaching out, I suppose, and vulnerability. But I want to get on with the sculpture, and the sculpture will be based on this picture. I'm going to be working in plaster of Paris, and I've never done that before. An interesting experiment. I'm sure things will go wrong, and I may scrap the whole thing at the end of it. You never know. We'll just see where it goes. Let's get started and see what happens. So the wire I'm using here is aluminium wire. It's in a square section, and whilst it's very flexible, it still holds its shape really well. Once I've made the armature, I'm using newspaper, just screwed up newspaper, to bulk the thing out a little bit and give a sense of the general shapes. It'll mean that the sculpture is considerably lighter than if you use just plaster. It's going to be really solid and heavy and probably crack anyway. And then I'm just using masking tape to tape it to the armature itself. So you can see it's beginning to take shape. It's really exciting at this stage. So after the newspaper, I'm using Plaster Bandage. What is it? It's kind of plaster impregnated cloth. So it has a strength of its own, and that, kind of an immediate strength of its own. So that holds the thing together pretty quickly, and it dries really fast, about well, 3 minutes and it's dry. These first stages can be a little bit fiddly. I'm always kind of worried that I'm going to break the thing. Right, so after the plaster bandage, it's a mix of plaster itself, the plaster of Paris. So let's get that mixed up. I'm not really sure what I'm doing with this. I don't know whether to mix it thin or thick or what, but it's just going to have to be a process of experimentation, and we'll see what happens. The whole thing could crack up and fall to pieces. And I've no doubt there are people out there going, "You're doing it wrong!" It's nice to do something that you don't know all the answers, and it's an experiment. It's really great fun. I'm loving doing this. If you're enjoying the video, please like, comment and subscribe perhaps to the channel. That would be great. And if you know more about this plaster business than I do, please do leave a comment below. Any help will be gratefully received. Okay, so we've had something of an overnight collapse. I'll just show you what's happened. So it's my own fault. I didn't strengthen the ankles enough, and as you can see, maybe they've collapsed. So as I say, it is my own fault. I thought the ankles were big enough as it was, and so I was kind of loath to put any more plaster on, but I'm going to have to do something with them now and bolster them up a little bit to carry the weight of the figure, because it's getting pretty heavy now. Anyway, onward and upward. Literally in his case. So I'm going to use some of this plaster bandage to fix it. Also, as you can see, it's quite awkward. Right, I'm going to leave that to go off, and then I'll start to build up the plaster on it to support the weight of the figure. Once the plaster's dry, you can carve away at the surface, but I'm kind of leaving that to a minimum, really. I really just want to build it up as I go, rather than carving into it. Feels a bit like cheating. It's not, of course, because there are no rules. This is the thin wire that I was talking about earlier. It's really flexible, and it's great for the structure of the hand. I'm going to speed some of these bits up because it gets a bit boring just watching me shove plaster onto the thing. It's important here to keep the shapes right. What happens is that the arm, which is round in this area, turns into a square essentially here. So you've kind of got to get that right. This is a bit like icing a cake, isn't it? Try and get some bulk into the base of this thumb. And not forget the underside. These are the places, if you don't get it right, it fails, because as it did this morning, not really taking enough care of making sure that there's plenty of plaster on the surface. And then what happens, of course, is it weakens and fails. Okay, final touches to the feet. I think it's about time he had a head, don't you? Okay, I've got a little bit of destruction work to do on this. I don't like the head, so I'm going to completely destroy it and start again. So here we go. It's surprisingly difficult to get into, actually. Oh, if you're wondering who the people are in the background, it's today's a teaching day. So I've half a dozen students in today.
The thing about watercolours, well, I normally work flat, because when you put all your water in, it runs all over.
Okay, well that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. I've really had fun with this, and all that's left to do now is find some kind of base for it. So I'm going to go along to a local timber yard and maybe find a piece of yew wood or something like that, maybe French polish it so it's a high shine, a nice contrast to the rough finish on the sculpture. If you did enjoy it, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.